Hello and welcome to another episode of the Small Agency Talk Show. I'm your host, Chip Griffin, the founder of SAGA, the Small Agency Growth Alliance, and I am absolutely delighted and very excited to have with me my good friend Lee McKnight Jr. Welcome to the show, Lee.
Hello, Chip. Thank you for having me back. I'm excited. We're here.
I am excited to have you here because I know it's always going to be a good show when I have you on, and frankly, probably a very unpredictable show, which makes it even more fun. So
maybe. And just the two of us. I'm going to sing that song now. Are you ready?
Okay.
I'm not going to do that.
Okay, good. I will never sing. That is my pledge to all of you viewers and listeners out there. I will never, ever sing on this show. Nobody wants to hear that. So,
that's fair.
Lee, if someone has been living in a cave and maybe this is their first time ever watching this very popular show, who are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself and where they can find you online.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah. So I am the VP of Sales for RSW US. So we are an outsourced business development group. We solely work with agencies, kind of an umbrella term because it does include PR and a lot of different types of firms. But essentially, that's been for 16 years now, been our sole focus. And it's helping at the top of the funnel breakthrough and then helping nurture those leads ongoing to get clients closer to closing business.
Excellent. And of course, they can find you at rswus.com. So,
and thank you.
Great place for lots more information. And if you're looking for more information about SAGA, you can find us at smallagencygrowth.com. So,
yes, great content there.
With that, let's go ahead and jump into the show. And obviously, as an expert in agency business development, it makes sense to talk about some of the tactics that agencies are using these days. And in particular, I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about where we stand with events. Because I know this is something you've written about recently. It's something that you think about. It's a lot of agencies are used to generating business from events, and the last 2 years have kind of disrupted that. So I'm curious, where do you see things standing with events as part of the arsenal of business development tactics?
Yeah, it really is going to be interesting moving forward because it's literally changing like as we speak, right? Because I saw just yesterday, I believe it was, I'm going to date evergreen content here, but you had events like non-agency for a second, but like Coachella and these giant festivals who are now it's no testing, no mask, pretty much back to normal. So, and I think we're, and you and I were talking before, I think we're seeing some of that, with events again, as we speak right now. So what's interesting, and I know,
we just saw that with the Super Bowl. Not to rip the Band-Aid off from, my friends in Cincinnati. Oh boy, he's gone.
Yes.
I have managed to insult Lee McKnight here, and he has, for those of you listening in the audio version, he walked off set because I mentioned the Super Bowl. But I mentioned it not to twist the knife on the Bengals. I did a little bit because it's just kind of fun.
It is fun.
I didn't have a dog in that fight, and I didn't really care who won the game. But
because of me, you wanted the Bengals to win, I'm sure. Let's just say
sure. We're going to go with that. But they made a big deal going into the Super Bowl about how they were going to enforce the mask-wearing policies in California, and you couldn't cheat by buying a popcorn and just having it sit on your lap throughout the game. And then Super Bowl Sunday came, and pretty much nobody was wearing a mask anywhere in the stadium. So, and a lot of people have said that's sort of everybody just saying, to heck with it, we're done with this, we're moving on. And we've seen in recent days lots and lots of jurisdictions removing mask mandates, removing vaccine requirements for going to restaurants and things like that. So, I think that the tide is shifting, at least for the moment. And if nothing else, that the last 2 years has taught us it can be unpredictable what's coming next. But at the moment, it feels like if people want to proceed with events, it's as good a time as any.
I think so. We released, and I know that's part of the reason why we're talking this, but we, RSW, released our New Year Outlook report about 5 weeks ago. It's an interesting one because it's the only one where we survey marketers and agencies. And it's also one where, because we're getting a lot of this is your predictions or, what are you expecting in this new year? We'll go back in Q2 and 3 and 4 and say, and, do some content around, okay, here's what the marketer said then, where are we today? And I in terms of events, what was interesting, and I'll just kind of read this out, but when we asked marketers and agencies in 2021, because we released this survey in December, that entire month when we were taking in the survey, in terms of moving forward into 22 and what their expectations were. 32% of marketers told us they attended 1 to 5 conferences or trade shows in 2021. It was a huge drop from 20, which is weird and interesting. 65% of marketers, and when we did this survey the previous year, said that they had. So a really big drop. And we asked also, and I won't go super into those just unrelenting stats here, but also what was interesting was that, and I guess good was when they did go, overwhelmingly both agencies and marketers went in person, I guess until kind of Omicron and things like that kind of busted out. So what do we take away from that on the marketer side? Because agencies, it was like 75%. They were raring to go last year. And I think many of us maybe, have been. I don't know if marketers just found that, what they were attending was kind of lackluster. And so, and then certainly travel and COVID has to play a big part of this without a doubt, but it was just interesting how much it dropped. And so I think it's going to be interesting again, moving forward from a business development standpoint, though. I think I know just we're seeing, and just kind of empirically that while the beginning of the pandemic was pretty jarring for a lot of agencies, and we talked this here on this show before, I think many of them realized, okay, we can't be relying on in-person events and networking, and we've got to have our in-house chops, and these inside sales tactics have got to be on point. And that's always been true, but even now, as we're cautiously, and to your point, starting to go back to normal, whatever that normal is, those agencies who really hone their craft on that inside sales piece, are the ones who are going to be doing better.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's a couple of things here, and I think it is interesting that a lot of times your research does tend to show a disconnect on many topics between the marketers and the agencies that serve them, right? So to me, it's not surprising that there may be some degree of difference in how they each respond and perceive these things. I think the other thing is a lot of folks are just reviewing their assumptions about all sorts of things related to business, right? Top on the list is, a lot of businesses are reviewing the assumption that you need to be in the office 5 days a week, 8 hours a day in order to be effective. And so we've seen that concept erode. I think that others are seeing the idea that, the only way to be doing things is these large scale in-person events or frequent attendance at events. I think that those assumptions are getting blown up and people are sitting there and trying to be more intentional about it. Now, does that last? Who knows?
Right.
But I think that at least in the moment, there are a lot of people questioning, should I do this? Should I even attend a virtual event? Is it actually worth my time that I'm spending on it? Yeah,
that's a great point. We just had our second virtual conference, of which you were a part of the initial one. And it was a good turnout. Again, we were happy, and we were a bit trepidatious, about, okay, now where are we with virtual? And we asked about moving forward with marketers and agencies. Like, what do you think about virtual moving forward? I think it was 82% of agencies, 60% of marketers said that they think virtual trade shows will remain a thing at least through 2022. And I think inevitably there might be some virtual fatigue from that. I don't know. Moving forward, it seems to me like it's going to continue to be a hybrid of some sort, even years from now. I think there's just people are seeing that there's value there for a number of reasons. So I think that's going to be interesting to see moving forward what that looks like.
I think fundamentally you attend in-person and virtual events for entirely different reasons, and I think that a lot of people sort of miss that concept and instead think virtual is replacing in person, and they're not. They're different things. An in-person event is much more about the interaction you have with other attendees and panelists outside of the formal structure. That's the real value that you get from going in person. Whereas virtual, it is the content that you're consuming, right? Because you don't typically have, at least I haven't seen a good virtual event that has a good way to really encourage that same sort of interaction between attendees.
Yes.
It's hard to do in a virtual way. You don't have, the bar to go to. I've seen the virtual happy hours. Ugh.
You are so on point with that because, and especially that word replaced, because you saw, I think early on, and I know we got feedback from marketers and prospects we talked to, and then our own agency clients of attending a show like that where they tried to emulate the in-person, like you said. And to be fair, in the beginning, no one knew what they were doing, I guess, is at least give some of them a pass. Let me put it that way. But the ones that were still trying to do it, I think you're right. I think maybe that's why that marketer percentage dropped, because it's not a replacement for that. And I think I agree with you. I've yet to see, and I've only had 2 or 3 instances of me personally going, but even just anecdotally hearing that, no, I didn't, that part of it was not great. It just wasn't effective. And so I think that's a great point.
Well, I mean, the other thing with virtual events is it's much easier for people to say, okay, this sucks, I'm just done, and they just close their browser, right? I mean, it's that simple. If I've traveled to New Orleans for a conference, I mean, you can sort of do the same thing by just staying in your hotel room and going to the bar early and those kinds of things, but so it has to be a much more compelling content experience in virtual.
It does.
Which again sort of flips on its head the way it is with in-person events, where it may be just get a marquee speaker in there to lure them in, and then people will find so much benefit in the hallway conversations and other things that they'll still enjoy their experience.
Yep. No, totally agree. And I know we've got a new business conference live in Chicago that we are a sponsor of in end of May. And that's all in person, no virtual piece of that at all. So it'll be interesting to see. And from what I understand, the attendance is already, the numbers are pretty good. So I think folks will be ready. I mean, by May, knock on wood.
Right.
For sure. But so that was, in terms of just trade shows. And I think the piece of it where agencies were finding a good chunk of their new business from, it'll be interesting to see how much of that comes back. I think events are obviously are coming. They're not going anywhere, but how much new business agencies get from those moving forward is going to be interesting.
Right. And I think that goes to, the overall idea that as an agency, you need to be looking at a variety of tools and techniques in order to grow your business. You can't put all your eggs in one basket because too many things can potentially disrupt that. Now, that doesn't mean you should be doing everything, right? True. I think you and I have certainly talked about this before about, if you try to do a million things and you do them all in, a halfway way or less than halfway, what's the point? So, but pick a couple of things that you can be consistent on, be good at, and that's a good way to grow your business. And so to me, that's sort of a segue into some of the other research that you all have done about other approaches that people can use to business development for agencies.
Yeah. And that's actually a good segue into, we touched on it, but I had thrown out to you that I wanted to mention an RFP story that I had. This does lead in, and I think it's serendipitous because I think you mentioned that you and Jenny just did your podcast. Is that released yet, or is that coming?
It's not released yet, so you'll have to stay tuned and subscribe to the Agency Leadership Podcast feed to hear our latest discussion about RFPs.
And Chip gave me no money for that. I mean, that's just a straight up plug.
That is perfect. I mean,
but yeah,
it's almost like you know what you're doing on these kinds of shows, Lee.
Look, I mean, we're trying. This is actually, I'll do the shorter version, but people are going to groan and be able to completely, any agencies that are watching or that do watch. So over the course, this is about 3 or 4 weeks ago, over the course of the 1 week, 3 different agencies, one that was actually a client that had come on board, that had this strategy in place with RFPs. And I'll get to, that pretty much was the strategy, but did not work at all. Talked to an agency who was thinking about coming on board with us, who was just about to embark on this strategy, and specifically the strategy of their new business. Okay, new business was only going to be going after RFPs. That's it. And I kind of had an internal gasp that in 2022, an agency would actually, that's truly their strategy. And by the way, they weren't in the verticals where you have to do that. And we talked about this a little bit, like higher ed, CDBs, No, they just thought that's what we're going to do. And I wasn't going to be the self-serving jerk to say, oh my Lord, please don't do that. But one thing we did talk about was just putting your team through that. Even if you're winning some of those, they are going to rebel at some point. Just forget everything else about that strategy for a second. And then I had a third agency who was thinking of coming on board in that same week that had mentioned to me healthcare. And they said, we're actually pretty strategic about RFPs. We don't do a ton of them. when we do, we're doing the homework up front and we tend to win them. And you're not to brag here, but we do because we really vet these pretty well. He goes, but this one this past week was different. We weren't able to vet it. It kind of came in through another agency or, hey, these guys are great in healthcare. However it did, it wasn't a normal process. And they were one of 18. Oh my sweet Lord. And I wish I could have been able to tell this agency, because this was the last conversation of that week. And I was like, they're still doing 18 in 2022. And he's like, you know what? Thank God we actually didn't make it past the first round, because when we found out we were one of 18, we almost bailed, but we thought that's not very professional. So yeah, let's keep going. He's like, that's the time where we were very pleased that we didn't go any further, because what a cattle call and a nightmare. So there's my story, but I just thought, my Lord, today to have that as your only strategy, I can't imagine.
I mean, RFPs as an agency growth strategy is sort of like smoking as a weight loss strategy. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Did you just make that up?
I just
Have
came
you been
to
saving
me.
that? I love that.
No, it just came to me, Lee. I mean, while we were talking. So
I'm stealing it. I'll credit you, but I'm stealing it.
I mean, look, it might work, but the side effects may not be particularly pleasant. So
It's so true. Yeah. Oh my God. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and you talk about the 18 participants, and that was actually the impetus for the discussion that Jenny had on our podcast, because there was a PR agency owner who said that he was invited to participate in an RFP process. He asked how many other agencies were invited, and they wouldn't tell him, and so he bowed out. And look, I mean, RFPs, as you've noted, there are some industries where you have to play the RFP game. Sure. You just don't have a choice. But you do have a choice which RFPs you're going to participate in. And if you're not already involved in conversations with someone, your odds of success are infinitesimally low. And you have to calculate the cost of all those lost RFPs when you're looking at, okay, I win 1 out of 10 RFPs. I'm so excited because it's a giant contract. Fantastic. Subtract the cost of all of those RFP responses from the profits on that one that you did win. Is it still worth it? Probably not. But okay, so events are kind of a crapshoot. RFPs, we've dumped on that. So what should agencies be doing if they want to grow in 2022?
Yeah, here's a stat I love from the report, and I will say, so we released a report there at the end of the year last year, and we talked about it. I think it was a little dour, but what was so great about this report, I thought, in so many ways, not to be a Pollyanna, because things are still happening pandemic wise, but a lot of optimism coming out of this report. So this one I love, and this stat has actually gone up for the past 5 years, and it's on content. So when we're talking about things that are working for agencies, I know some agencies probably just froze up if they're hearing that, like, please don't tell me about how much content I have to create. But it was, where is my stat? I just totally lost it. Ultimately, let me see. Oh, here we go. We asked marketers if they read agency created content in any form. The answer was 77% of marketers say they do. And last year it was 73. The year before it was 64. It's gone up and up. I mean, to me, that's a huge number. And during the pandemic, a lot of agencies, ones that have been around for a long time, had never done content before, right? And they're like, you know what? Now either we have some time or we're all stuck at home. We're going to do this. We're going to make a go of it. And, keeping up with it, obviously always, no matter where you are in the world or what's happening, has always been a challenge for agencies, just like ongoing new businesses. But to me, I wanted to shout that to the rooftops and tell these agencies, you know what? It's hard. It's hard to get in and write a post and put it on LinkedIn on some kind of ongoing basis. You're not in a vacuum. These marketers are reading your content. And we asked a follow-up question. This one wasn't a surprise. What's the platform that you read it on most? LinkedIn. No shock there typically, right? But that just goes to show, if you are an agency, build it and they will not come. You have to get it into their hands. And by hands, I'm meaning whether it's on LinkedIn, on your blog, shooting out to them, even when you're prospecting, and you have to do that in a nuanced bit of a way. You're not just throwing it up on them, right? But it just shows that they are reading your stuff, especially for small to mid-sized agencies, which are the bulk of that we work with. And I know here we are at Spark in terms of small agencies in your target, Chip. That to me was fantastic. And I hope, and I've mentioned this to many firms, like, keep going. They're reading it. It is a longer tail proposition. It is. But if you're doing it well, they're reading it. So I think that's great. You're not alone, agencies. If you're creating content, it's getting there.
Well, and creating content has so much value even beyond the fact that you've got something that you can talk to a prospect about, right? Because
100%.
the mere act of creating that content can be beneficial to you and your team. If you're creating a podcast, the relationships that you're developing, the information that you're getting from the interviews and the conversations that you're having are beneficial. If you're writing blog posts or articles for LinkedIn or doing a LinkedIn newsletter, which is the new popular thing to do, it seems, based on the number that show up in my inbox every day.
I'm glad you brought that up. I want to go back to that, but keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, so it gives you that opportunity to coalesce your own thinking.
Yeah.
And get it out there. And so that's useful. And it's too many agencies, I think, avoid this because they think, oh, it's too much work, it's too much hassle. I don't want to let people in on the secret sauce. They need to hire me for that.
Oh, I hate that one.
That one's stupid. I mean, that one's just,
that one drives me nuts.
If what you post on LinkedIn is the sum total of your value,
right.
Close up shop, throw the keys away, be done with it. Because that's bonkers. It's the same with people who are like, well, I don't want to take a phone call with someone, and share ideas unless they're going to pay me. Why? I mean, is that 30 minutes going to completely solve their problem? In which case, they probably shouldn't hire you anyway.
Fair.
Right?
So true. Yeah. Go back to the LinkedIn newsletters. Yeah. I wanted to bring that up. I saw that Jenny. Have you tried to do that yet?
I have not done that yet, but
I didn't think so. Okay.
I seem to be about the only person, and I believe you're doing it. In fact, I think that's what spurred me to nudge you for this particular episode.
Oh, thanks for reading, Chip. Well, listen, we talk about what's going to help agencies grow. I would give it a shot, especially if you're the principal, and you are exactly right. And I've gotten quite a few of them too. But I did see my own numbers, and I'm in no way, shape, or form any kind of influencer, even close to it. But when I would post an article, not a post on LinkedIn, but an actual longer form, kind of like a blog post, I got some reads, but I'll be fully transparent with your audience here. I mean, some of those though, it would be like 80 or 100, in the first day or so. When I did the newsletter, the initial reads were 300 and 400 and 500.
Yeah,
it's pretty awesome. And the thing is, I am pretty conscious about my LinkedIn strategy in terms of who I follow and connect with, and we tell our agencies the same thing. And I think most people that get it, that's supposed to be LinkedIn. But the folks that are reading that are mostly agencies or folks like yourself who are in the world,
right?
And so it's been good. The key is, yes, a ton of people are doing it. But I read an interesting article, and I can't remember the person, so forgive me, person, for not crediting you properly. But we know that, you tell me what percentage you think it is, Chip. 85% of the people doing their newsletter right now will not be doing it 6 weeks from now, even, right?
Correct.
It's hard to keep up.
It is.
So if you can play that long game, just like with content, I tend to say to agencies, give it a shot, especially if you're already creating content.
Right.
Throw it up there and try it. But yes, right now I don't know if people are going to get newsletter fatigue. We'll see, because you're right. I mean, I get 2 or 3 of those in my LinkedIn inbox every day.
Well, I mean, there's an advantage to being one of the early movers on that sort of thing. So if you start early and if you stay consistent, then I think that that you have a considerable leg up, even as more and more people do it. Because I think at some point it probably will become popular enough that that people stop paying attention.
Yeah,
because you can only read so many, right? I mean, but the nice thing with LinkedIn is it makes it super simple for someone to subscribe to it, right? This is not like you go to a website, you got to type in your email address and hit submit. Maybe confirm the email that comes to you. I mean, LinkedIn, it's literally is you get invited and you just sure.
Yeah, and we're just looking at it as a solid add to what we're already doing. So there's that. So another from the report, if I may, and it's a subject near and dear to our hearts, is agency specialization. We could do a whole show just on that.
Absolutely. I prefer to call it focus rather than specialization.
I do like that better because, and I'm actually glad you went in that way, because I know there's an eye roll from many agencies watching, from many of them that say, look, I get it. All these consultants and you all telling us we have to specialize. We're a generalist agency. We're doing fine, especially during the pandemic. So it's and I would never be one to argue against results because that would be foolish. But so what we had asked marketers in terms of the report itself, we asked, let's see, were they more likely, I think the specific question, were they more likely to look for a specialty agency versus a full service agency looking forward in the next 2 and 3 years? So we had actually seen 3 years of decline in the percentage of marketers more likely to look for a specialty agency until 2020. So we saw an increase. So it was 52% that said they were more likely to look in 2020. And that jumped to 60% in 2021. So it's increasing. And it's interesting because in tandem with another stat, and we can talk about in-house agencies. In December, Adweek released a report. It's Adweek, so they don't even know who we are, but a little bit. We've been in it a few times.
Yeah.
Humble brag. But they put out a report that said it's increasing. In-house agencies are going up, and it's like, okay. In our report, it was just the exact opposite. And I think it was because it was mostly small and mid-sized agencies that were responding, and commensurately the types of marketers that are working with them. Not that small and mid-sized agencies don't work with big companies, because they do. But the in-house agencies were decreasing by quite a percentage, like a 25 or 30% drop, which if you're an agency is like awesome. Because I know, you have to play nice in the sandbox, but if they're doing that, and if that is decreasing, and we see that play out, it's just more opportunity for agencies. But going back to the specialization piece, I think, it doesn't mean you have to be a CPG agency and that's all you do, right? So I tell agencies this when they do give me that eye roll, because I'm like, look, it's expertise, or to your point, it's focus, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the key, and it's why I use focus instead of specialization or niching down or those kinds of things, because those are things that just scare agencies as soon as they hear it. They're like, "Wow, that's not me," or that would be boring if I did that," or any number of the litany of excuses that I hear. But when you start to think about it as focus, and you start to think about, okay, if I'm going to be running this business, I need to have real clarity over who my ideal clients are and they're not, and you get that only by developing your focus.
Yeah.
Right. And if you just say that I'm a generalist agency and you don't put any other qualifications on that, you can't be all things to all people. Right. I mean, the same agency that serves the mom and pop restaurant in Concord, New Hampshire, isn't going to serve a Fortune 100 company in New York City. Right. It's not going to happen. And so you need to know who you serve, what you serve them with. You need to understand, what your most profitable clients are. I mean, this is one of the things that drives me bonkers when an agency can't tell me who their most profitable clients are. Well, you need to know that because you want more of them.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee you have profitable clients and you have less profitable clients.
Sure.
Maybe even, God forbid, unprofitable clients. So you need to know these things, and you need to have some kind of focus around it. So I think it is absolutely essential that agencies be thinking about it. It gives you a real edge when you're talking with that prospect in the business development conversation, as you've noted. I'm not sure that most clients think in terms of specialist versus generalist, except perhaps when they're responding to a survey, right? It's more, can you solve my problem? Do you seem to have the expertise to solve my problem? Does it feel like a good fit? And I think that if you have a focus, you're much more likely to pass that test.
100% agree. I'm stealing that from you too. That's two things today, Chip. I like focus better.
I'll send you an invoice.
Yeah, that's fine. Because you know what? That focus also goes back to where we start. Well, not exactly the content piece, where with that focus comes that expertise that those prospects and those marketers are seeing. And if you don't have it, and I've talked to agencies that are in this position where the site is all over the place, their content's all over the place. That focus also brings into focus. See what I did there? Everything else you're doing in terms of that business development and your strategy. Without that, man, it makes it so much harder. And I see the agencies that are in that position struggle mightily. And when that focus comes, you see the light bulb, literally, you see it in their eyes, like, okay, yes, that makes total sense. Why haven't we been doing it this way? So I think, agencies
it lets you be more effective at hiring. It lets you be more efficient in your processes, which drives your profitability, right? Because if you're doing a similar kind of work for similar clients, not identical, not cookie cutter and all that, but if you're developing that expertise, so you get better at it, you produce better results in less time. That's good for your clients and it's good for your bottom line.
Yeah. Yep. No, totally. Yeah. And so with that, we should we could put all that on bumper sticker for agencies, because just don't be scared. And again, I do like focus better, sincerely, in all seriousness. I think that would put folks more at ease rather than coming in hard with specialization, because they do hear that a lot. I get it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's something I didn't develop right out of the gate. It's because I had a lot of conversations with agencies and saw that reaction, and I started to get a better reaction when I said focus. People are like, okay,
Interesting.
I kind of hear that makes sense. I'm not going to just get my back up and reject your advice out of hand when you start talking that way. So, but that, unfortunately, we're at the end of the time we have available.
Wow.
The time has really flown, and you mentioned a bumper sticker, so now it's time to bring in a prop.
It is. So this is a good one. Now wait, it's not. Oh, a real blowfish and a lamp. How awesome is that? It's also a little disturbing. It's kind of weird.
It is a little weird, particularly on camera. I think that may translate a little bit better in person. And of course, for those of you who are listening to the podcast audio only version of this, you don't get to see it. So I will just encourage you to go to smallagency.tv and subscribe to the YouTube channel so that you can see these, and maybe you even want to participate live, because we're happy to integrate your comments. And whether they're snarky or insightful.
Sure.
That's kind of like the show. We're snarky and insightful all at the same time.
Love it.
So with that, that's going to draw to an end today's episode of the Small Agency Talk Show. Lee McKnight, I've been delighted to have you here. I look forward to having you back again. You bring substance, humor, and just great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Chip. Yeah, I really enjoy it. These are always fun. Yeah, and get some good stuff out of it too.
And go Bengals, right? So with that, I'm going to sign off. Everybody have a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing you all back here again next week.